Hello everybody, my name is Bragster and today I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be going over the elements of film, particularly movies today, elements of film and movies that I believe aren't used often enough. Like especially maybe in blockbuster movies, I might see it maybe a bit more in movies that aren't in the limelight of the movie world, and I just think they need to be used often enough. Now I was considering before recording this video to call it something like 10 elements not used in film. Like I've got them all written down here, they're all stuff I've written down. I could do this where you just hear my voice and I show clips and pictures, but to be honest with you, I don't want to do that personally, so I'm just going to do this. And I was considering doing like 10 things, blah blah blah, but I don't know, I don't want this one to be a list. Some things I might do lists in the future, but this in particular I don't really want to be a list, because I think that, you know, this is one of those things where I kind of want to talk about things I enjoy, about movies that maybe aren't used often enough, and I kind of just want to do what I usually do, which is just ramble and not worry about hitting loads of elements. Plus I've got about 8 here, I might think of some off the top of my head, but also I don't want to use loads if I come up with some more in the future. So let's get into it. So the first element I think that isn't used often enough is killing off the main character at the end of a film. Now, you might be thinking, but loads of movies do that, Connor. Now, they do, but I think it's not used right. A lot of the time, at the end of a movie, you know, the story lends itself to the main character not surviving, especially if it's like a apocalyptic movie or something like that. You know, people are meant to die all the time in it, and sometimes just it's not right to have the main character win. You know, I've seen it a lot in saw it in The Grudge that I watched last year. You know, you're not meant to win that. It's not something you can win. You can't beat The Grudge. That's the whole point. So obviously it would be stupid if someone does beat The Grudge, because you can't beat it. That's the whole myth. The whole myth and the legend in Japanese horror is you can't beat The Grudge. So to bring it over to a Western audience and say that you can would do disservice to what was already there. So I think there's certain things where it's like they shouldn't win. You know, you should be disappointed and you should be upset that the main character doesn't win. But it should make sense. You shouldn't do it for the sake of it, which I've seen a few times. I've seen a few movies, can't think of any off the top of my head, that have really just killed them off like that just for the sake of it. And I'm like, it doesn't have that effect. You have to build them up. It has to make sense in terms of the story. I mean, that's a lot of things that films don't do often enough. They want spots. They don't. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe if you're writing a movie, if you want a certain spot, build the film around that spot. Don't necessarily fit a spot to the film, you know, because that spot should fit in with the story. So if you build a spot around a film, it makes more sense. Similarly, is that the right word? Similarly, something like that. I can't speak, Jesus. But on the same note, killing off the main character at the start. Now, and then the secondary character takes over. Now you must be thinking, well, if they're the main character, they can't be killed off at the start because they're the main character of the story, so therefore the secondary character is the main character. And you're right. You are right. However, there's this wonderful thing in film nowadays called a trailer. Now, the trailer can feed people down different paths. The best one I found for this was the new Godzilla that came out. when that came out, it was pitched as this older guy being the main character and his son being the secondary character. What you didn't know was very early on in the film, the dad dies. The biggest actor in the movie dies almost immediately. Like easily the first half, maybe in the first half an hour. Just dead, gone. The shock that you get from that makes you on edge for the rest of the film, because if you're sitting in the cinema and you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, that's the main character, they're going to survive to the end, you know, oh, it's going to be alright, and then bang, they're dead. Instantly you're paying attention to everything that happens, because they've just broken the law. Basically, there's a film law that the main character survives to the end, right? If you break that, you've got the audience on the edge of their seat thinking anything, no one is safe, everyone could die, like they could kill anyone off any second, and that is what you want. Like, don't get me wrong, certain movies doesn't fit, and that's the same for all of these elements. Certain movies, certain concepts won't fit with this, but there are some that it really does, and you just don't use it. I think there was one shark movie with Samuel L. Jackson in, and he dies instantly, and I mean instantly. You know, at that time, the audience were like, "Oh my god!" You know, if I speak to anyone about that movie, I can't remember the name of it. Oh, it's going to bother me. I'll find it and I'll pull it up here or something. It probably might have already came up, but I'll pull it there. But there was that shark movie. Basically killed off Samuel L. Jackson, which most movies don't do anyway. But to do it so early on, like, it's one of the first times you see the shark, it's just like, holy shit, you know, this, okay, it just puts you on edge that little bit more. Other things, use the first scene as the final scene. Now, I've seen this as Extraction recently, on Netflix. That's very new, brilliant film, as my review of that went out yesterday. Then you've got Usual Suspects, but the problem with Usual Suspects is it used it in a way where it referred to the first scene a lot more, but to just start with the final scene, cut off at a point, and then start the story and get it through, you recognise that that's the end of the film. And I think that just, it adds that element to when you get towards the end of the film and you see that scene, you're like, oh my god, we're at the end. Like, this is it. Like, something big's gonna happen now. And you're building up to a moment where, and it's as simple as you see some blood on the floor, or you hear a gunshot or something, you know, whatever would be impactful in that movie, showing that at the start and then building up to it to be shown at the end, that impact of, oh, we're at the end now, that it just resonates with the viewers. They're like, oh god, you know, we're here. I think that is an element that needs to be used correctly. You can't just be like having two people talking at the end of the film and show that at the start, and then it probably needs to be in some sort of action film or something like that, you know, something where you can show something really drastic, whether that be blood, hear a gunshot. You've got to use sound and your eyes, you know. You can't just spoon feed them, like almost like you do at the end. At the end, you basically spoon feed them what's going on. You've got to take a snippet of the film where if you take it out on its own, will intrigue you, but won't spoil anything. That just sets you up for the rest of the film. That needs to be used more often. One I love, and a lot of films nowadays are too scared of the media, of reviewing websites and stuff. Now that's very rich coming from me because I review a lot of films and movies, but you probably noticed I'm very positive. I try to find the positive stuff in everything. So there'll be some movies I think are great, but there are some I'll probably go, oh, that's really good, and it'll probably only be about a C, average. But to me, that's good, It's the terrible ones that I don't like. But this one is never used because people are too scared to piss off anyone. And that is to have the villain win or have some sort of unsatisfying ending. Almost like a, oh, we lost moment. I put that in quotation marks, Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War. That ending was talked about for ages. One of my favourite endings, but also one of the most controversial endings. A lot of fans didn't like it because the villains won. It seems ridiculous, but a lot of fans, if the villains win, get quite annoyed. And I don't understand it. Because that impact, when I watched Infinity War, when I sat there in the cinema was silent. Right? At the end of a film, every time everyone starts to talk, if it's a packed showing, everyone starts to talk. Right? To be in a packed showing and everyone's silent at the end of the film in shock that the villains won, perfect. By far one of the best decisions Marvel have made. And it's not often used, And even then, it just links into the killing off the main character sort of thing. You could kill off the main character, it'd be a really unsatisfying ending, and you could still kill off the main villain. You could still kill him off in a way, but because you've killed off the main character who everyone cared about, it's still an unsatisfying ending. You can still kill off the main villain, but have an unsatisfying ending, and having people maybe go home not happy, that's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if they go home not happy but they hated the movie. But if they go home not happy because the villain won, that's what you went for. And you have to take that on the chin. You have to take on the chin that you're probably going to get a few reviews that tell you you're crap. You're going to have to take that on board. Because a lot of stuff like this, they're going to be like, this is crap, this is crap, this is crap, don't like it. Because people don't like things that are different, A lot of complaints I have with a lot of superhero-y movies was that the villains every time lost. Even though maybe the villain is stronger, smarter, whatever it is, than the actual hero. It's okay to have the heroes lose. If it makes sense. Rogue One. Star Wars Rogue One. That one for me, we knew as Star Wars fans, anyone that's a Star Wars fan that knows the background of it knew that that planet or whatever was going to be destroyed in some way, or whatever it was. There was some beliefs that, that it wasn't going to end well. But it was kind of an unsatisfying ending to a point. Having all of that happen, you're like, oh, that's a shame, for them to die or them to die. But the whole thing about Rogue One was the team that went on it, called Rogue One, it was a suicide mission. That's what it was. It was a suicide mission. So for me, you're going on a suicide mission. How many suicide missions do you actually come back from? You shouldn't come back from them. So for them not to come back, it was impactful because it was like, it makes sense. In terms of the story, it has to make sense. Don't get me wrong, you can't have a spoon beat a human or something, sort of thing, that would be ridiculous. But if it works with the story, having the villain win isn't a bad thing. and I think it works. Next is having the secondary character sacrifice themselves rather than the main character. Now for this one, I have no examples of. This is one I came up with. You know, the amount of times you have the main character sacrifice themselves. It's predictable now. Nowadays, it's predictable. Back in the day, it was impactful. You know, there are certain movies it was really impactful for, and I was like, yeah, this works. But when you watch it over and over and over and over and over again, it loses its impact. So for me, having the secondary character sacrifice themselves would be better, especially if the secondary character is maybe more likeable, even more detestable. If he's like a really snot bag, horrible person and suddenly sacrifices themselves, you know, you can have that redemption story arc. You can have that with this character, and then almost show no redemption, and then all of a sudden, bang, you know, saves the main character and sacrifices themselves. Not many movies do it. I don't know why, because it's not risky to do. Again, it has to fit in with the story, but it's not risky to do. There's so many different ways you can sacrifice a secondary character for a main character, you know. Except from the jumping a bullet one, in front of a bullet, maybe. That one, not so much. The only way that would work is if there's like a bunch of people shooting and they tell them to go, tell the rest of them to go, and they have like 2 guns and they just start wailing on them, and you just see like them slowly die as they keep getting shot. You know, that for me would have some impact, you know. But like someone goes to shoot and bang, and then the other person jumps in front of the bullet, you know, that's happened way too many times, like dramatic jump in front of a bullet. But you can use it right where the secondary character sacrifices themselves rather than the main character. Another one is having the guy or girl not get the guy or girl in a love story. Maybe even reject them. I've seen a lot of love stories where they get the girl or get the guy that they want. And fair enough, it makes sense, it's a love story. But there's certain love stories I've seen. I think it... God, there are so many spoilers in this one. But yeah. I don't really want to spoil any. I've spoiled a lot already, so I'd have to put that at the start. It won't make a difference to you, it's just for me to edit the video. But there's so many films which make them get the guy, but then there's been a couple. Kissing Booth is one. You know, where necessarily they don't get them, you know, for whatever reason, or they get another guy or girl. That's a switcheroo I don't mind. It's being used a lot more nowadays. I think is a loophole. You know, they quite like to find where they fall for someone else, or they go, no, this person's for me. And that one, I'm like, oh, really? Winds me up a little bit. Don't really like it. I'm starting not to like it anyway. But there's like, so why can't the person maybe not get them? Maybe realise that they're better off without them, or they can maybe find a career that they love instead, and they find something else that they love. You know, it could even be as simple as an animal, a dog or a cat. You know, maybe it's something they get as pity. You know, oh, you know, look after the animal, it's better than a human, and then they grow to realise that they don't need this other person. But even reject them, just they come back to you, oh, I love you, and be like, no, I'm happy now. I'm happy without you, you know, you had your chance. Little things like that, you know, maybe it's something where the person becomes wealthy, and then the person comes back and they're like, no, I'm happy where I am. I'm happy with the people that stuck by me while getting to the top. Little things like that, I think, need to be used a bit more often. Another one is, I've spoken about before, is a scare showing of villains in horror movies. I've spoke about this in my review of Polaroid. The idea of seeing parts of the villain but never seeing the whole villain until like near the end, you know. Or as simple as maybe in something like, I know in a lot of Japanese horror movies, a lot of the villains have sounds, like The Grudge has the croaking noise, you know. Maybe hearing that and then an attack, you know. You still need to show attacks. I think that's the thing a lot of horror movies don't do, is they will show scare showings but then not show the attacks. You just hear some screams. I don't like that. I like maybe seeing the person scared, you know, having a 2, 3 minute, 5 minute sequence of them being scared, of them running away, whatever it is, and then having, you know, them being killed. You know, you've got that build up, constant build up to the villain killing them. You know it's going to happen because they're probably not a main character. Deep down you'll know whether they're going to make it to the end. You know, you develop that feeling, and if it's someone that maybe you haven't met before, like it's just a random character, you know they're going to die. As simple as that. Like, when you know it's going to happen, build it up for like 5 minutes, and then maybe just show an arm or something stabbing them, or whatever. However they die, you show how they die, but you don't show the villain. That doesn't get used often enough because it just builds suspense. It puts you on edge because you don't know what it looks like. If you know what it looks like, you can prepare yourself. Because a lot of horror movies, you're scared at the start and you become less and less scared. The movie It is a great example of that. And I know it was on purpose. Don't start having a go at me down in the comments. I know it's on purpose in It. You're scared at the start, you're not scared at the end. But do you want to know why? There's a big factor of that. It's because you see the villain. Every time. You're constantly seeing villain after villain after villain. You're seeing it every time. So you become desensitized. If you show it too often, you become desensitized. But you can still show the killings and the attacks, which build up the suspense. Don't show the villain. Bang. Perfect combo for me. I mean, it makes me scared because you don't know what it looks like. You don't know how it can attack. Like, I think a big thing is, like, they'll show it and you'll be like, oh, it's like not that fast, or it's got this weakness. You know, never show the weaknesses. That's another one. Hardly, if ever, show the weaknesses of a villain before the final battle. You know, or never show the weaknesses of a character before the main characters encounter it. Because I think it was in Lights Out. I saw the one where, you know, it accidentally got it trapped inside the light during one of the sequences which weren't that important. Like, it was with a character that wasn't really a main one. Like, it didn't matter. That character didn't matter, but yet they managed to find some sort of way to hurt it. And for me, that's stupid, because the main characters are meant to be the ones doing that. Because you just become desensitized to it then. So yeah, that's one. And then the final one is a large focus and minutes on one action sequence. I've seen it loads of times, like loads of secret agent films focus on multiple different action sequences. Fair enough. Multiple different action sequences are exciting. But recently, Extraction, it had one sequence where I think it was filmed straight for like 10-15 minutes or something, which was one action sequence. The camera never cuts, ever. You know, it just hardly ever cuts, but the action itself never cuts. Like, maybe the cameras do, but the action itself doesn't. That one was great. The Equalizer, the final action sequence in that, it's long. Like, the song they use for the non-important part, I love pointing that out. Like, it's one of the least important action sequence. Like, in that final action sequence, during like the little bit before he gets to any of the main characters, you know, there's like this 6-7 minute song playing in the background in full from start to finish, like, and then you've got like the extra 5-10 minutes on top of that coming from the rest of the character, like killing off a couple of the main characters. Like, focusing on one action sequence really helps, like, because when the longer an action sequence goes on, the less you believe that the good guy's gonna win. It just, because it goes on and on, you're like, oh my god, the villain's gonna find a way to do this. Like, the villain's gonna find a way to stop him, because it just keeps going on and on and on and on. It's not used often enough. It really isn't. Like, it's one of those things that really needs to be used more often, because it's one of my favourite parts in any action movie. Those long action sequences are the best. So yeah, those were my elements in film that I don't think get used often enough. I've got one for TV shows as well that I'm developing, so if you want to see that, hit that like button. It just helps me know that you like this video, and then I can release the TV shows one as well. The more you like it, the quicker my next one will come out. Otherwise, I will take a bit longer to produce the TV show one. But if you like it, and if you like the video, then I will know to publish that. In the comment section down below, what elements in film do you think aren't used often enough? Because I'm really interested. Like, these are my point of view. Like, this is my opinion. You know, you might not agree. You might think that actually those elements, you don't like them. Like, maybe. So what elements do you like? What elements do you like that aren't used often enough? I'm really intrigued to know that, because it'd be interesting to see your point of view. Hit that subscribe button to not miss a thing. And I will see you in the next video. See ya!